Supposing imagine you're headhunted, you kind of airdropped into a company, right, a new organization tomorrow, right? And you don't know the history, you don't know the politics, etc., and all those things. So, what would tell you within the first 30 days that this culture has been there's a culture that is kind of suppressing initiative or somebody raising hands? Is this how do they really are the people given the chance or not given? How do you find that out?
As soon as we join in any organization, from my perspective, what the best thing is that the interactions will generally reveal about the personality or the way that people operate in that organization. That will be very vivid in the early stages itself, because all the days will not be sugar coated. The initial first 2-3 days or a week might be good, but then when you come into the real operational work or the task, when you are handling it, you will know when there is a stoppage everywhere, there is a blocking everywhere, or there is a particular hierarchy of approvals or the processes. It will be very clearly visible that there is.
So, what would be the signs
shift
that are saying people are holding on and not contributing?
It is very clear. See, ownership or the delegation is something which people hold very closely. Like for example, I'll tell you a classic example which I dealt recently. There's one of a senior leader. That leader does not want to delegate anything to the team. No cascading of the information. So, the team does not know the purpose of why they are doing a task. How do they navigate? Or if they does not know what is that they are working for, and it is only given as a piecemeal, then the purpose is never solved, right? Purpose is never achieved. But at the same time, there is another leader who cascades 90% of the information, which has to go with lots of clear guidelines. The achievement and success of that team is always spot on, because the entire team carries
more information and more
transparency and the trust which is driven through the leadership to the entire team. Give that openness, right? Everyone feels they belong to that project, while other project they don't belong to that. They only look at that minuscule way that, okay, my task is done, I'm going home. So even when there is a need and the necessity for the organization also, team will not stand for that. So the culture is very clearly top down. I definitely believe anyone enters the organization, we can make it very clear, because culture is always driven by the leader. Leader, when we are definitely picking up the right person, should be with the right attitude. Otherwise, the entire thing collapses.
So, is there a culture of constructive dissent? Where is some, or everybody just saying yes? That is one of the very simple flags, that if everybody is just saying yes sir, and things are moving ahead, versus is there a dialogue or a constructive dissent that comes into conversation where people are allowed to provide alternate point of views. Eventually, what may be the right thing to do for the organization, that is done, but at least are people voicing it out or not?
Sudhanshu? Yeah.
Sure. So I think I'll take a step back. So I've grown up in various states of India. I've lived like 4 or 5 years in one state, and so I've always lived in cross-culture, communities there. And then I worked in Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, Chennai, and now I'm in Hyderabad. I'm pretty new. I think one thing we have to, the first step is accept that this will happen.
Right.
There will be a problem in terms of people associating to only people who come from their language background or their religious or religion background. Or you can very clearly see, if I come to that question, if you observe, you'll see very clearly in a meeting that people are not opening up. And you know they have something to say. It's very clear. The conversations in the cafeteria are very clear that something is not right. Then you see who is sharing the ideas. And for example, a manager is from one state and only that state guy is sharing, and there's something serious issue in the team. Now, these can be biases or they can be perceived biases. These will create an issue. And as a leader, I think first thing you have to understand is accept it, then work on it. Now, coming to GCCs, there are two categories, I would say. One is established. First time, 15 years, 20 years, they have gone through a learning process. Now, the new GCCs, for example, I'm working with pharma companies. The biggest, I would say, step for them to do well or fail is what is the first set of leaders they're hiring. And they set the culture, whether they should speak up in front of the people they're not sure or not. And that's how the whole culture builds from there. So you have to make sure the first set is the right kind of leaders.
Okay.
I can just add one thing to what he said in correlating with what's discussion happening there. Will the leader be allowed to speak or has to just follow the order? That defines again the entire discussion there.
There are three insights that I want to share quickly. The first one is that it's not that, so what he said is bang on, that the Western world came in here for cost arbitrage and they stayed for the talent. So it's not that this GCC work wasn't happening earlier. I mean, G Capital or G Jack Welch Technology Center was always there. I know that Novartis has its global hiring team sitting out of Hyderabad for a longish time, and so on. So there are a huge number of examples. Now, when you look at the GCCs from the true sense of talent, you're saying that we are a global organization, and some parts of our business processes or things that we do is located in a particular geography. And so there is no distinction between what people do in my home country vis-a-vis any other country, any other location. And there, the economics of it is interesting because if you're doing that as an organization, you have an operating time window of between 16 hours to 24 hours in a day. So that's definitely better than an 8-hour, 12-hour time window if you were looking only at the US and Europe.
Two things, and I think you were possibly provoking us. So I'm responding to that provocation in some senses. But, and you were talking about the West and, permission being asked from there and things like that, whether that's a cultural issue. I feel, however hard we are trying, I do feel, and I'm glad to see you and I'll comment on that as well, but however hard we are trying, there is still that feeling of looking towards the West for a validation and an approval. So to the example that you were talking in there as well, that the process wasn't working, somewhere the thought was, West ne bol diya, this is right thing to be doing. And so that is something we'll all have to, and this generation that's coming in is much better than the previous ones, where that sense of confidence is much higher and that color isn't playing in their minds in that sense. And I was saying it's good to see how you are dressed today. Many of us are conforming to the West in some, the ladies as exceptions, but that is there. And the second that you were also asking is, your question was the rural school vis-a-vis a public school in a metro. I think the time today, and even in the past, especially in technology has been a great leveler. So if you're behind your screen, and especially with AI coming in, nobody is an expert. So how good you are, whether you speak English or you don't speak English, or whether you're polished or not polished, whether you're well-read or not well-read, as long as you can speak the language of that computer, you are the person who's making that action happen. And that generation is much better at raising their hands and doing and experimenting things than the examples we are talking, which is more the manager and the manager of the manager. That comes from a previous generation.
So I now remembered, thanks to him. So you had mentioned Three Idiots. All of us loved that movie. But the interesting thing that I want to point out from that movie is that actually Phunshuk Wangdu escaped the educational system. He was an exception. All the others who got caught, I mean, especially his two other friends, were having enormous problems. So now I would like to say that we are and I see that change happening in the demography since Mahendra Singh Dhoni became the captain. So this is the Mahendra Singh Dhoni effect, where you have people who have studied in the vernacular, they have escaped the typical education system. Whatever they have learned, they've learned on their own. The only thing that they struggle with initially is the mastery of the English language. But the enough and more aids and the environment itself will get them to pick it up and run with it quickly. So the real talent, like you said, in technology, some of your best coders can't express what they're thinking, but they're really good. And that's what has been the genesis of some of the homegrown IT companies who've been doing brilliant work, and a couple of them are my clients as well. So you know that this person will struggle and will be very shy in putting up their hand or even speaking one line in public. But as far as their work is concerned, they're just brilliant. So I think this is what is going to feed into what we will see as the next kind of where Indian talent truly becomes global while sitting here in a GCC.
Tanay, I would quickly conclude that is to your point about looking to the West. So in the last GCC that I was part of, so I was like you said, there is no site director kind of thing or a site lead kind of thing nowadays, right? But so when we had these, so we have to have this 360-degree pulse and all of that, right? So people here in India, we would write out names of people in the US for 360 degrees, right? Saying that because we are actually feeling that we are part of the team. But people in the US would not be putting our names there. That would be their neighbors sitting there who's doing it. But now I'm told there's a lot of change there happening. So obviously there is hope as well.